Welcome to Astrology of the Unknown,
a true crime astrology podcast.
I'm your host, Joseph Mulholland.
And I'm your other host, William Holloway.
Today, we're going to be covering an aviation mystery, actually. And no, it's not Amelia Earhart. It's pretty close in terms of lore. And do we want to just jump right in, or what do you want?
Yeah, I wanted to say first, whenever I think about this one, it just kind of brings me back to, I was working in DC at the time.
Oh, right. I remember.
Yeah. And I remember being in like the office gym, working out when all the TVs would be on. CNN would be on with Wolf Blitzer.
Oh, yeah.
They were starting to get really wild with the graphics. Speaking of graphics, with, I've got this like kind of old school background going on. And I remember Wolf Blitzer, like, kind of like, he was like walking on like an animated version of the plane. So I just always picture Wolf Blitzer like walking on Malaysian Airlines 370.
Oh, that's so weird.
And like right around that time, like I also remember going to like happy hour after work and seeing Wolf Blitzer, like after I had just seen him that day standing on the plane. He was like having drinks.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
So you did mention it. I hadn't mentioned what we were doing yet, but you did mention it. So it's fine. So we are doing the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, which in doing I remember when this story came out, but like I didn't realize how weird it truly was.
Yeah, it's a real weird one.
Yeah. So it's March 8th, 2014, just after midnight. A Boeing 777 carrying 239 people lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The destination was Beijing. The flight number was Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. It could have been an ordinary overnight journey lasting less than 6 hours. Instead, it became one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. Within an hour of takeoff, the aircraft vanished. No distress call, no confirmed explanation, no definitive crash site. More than a decade later, despite one of the largest and most expensive search efforts ever conducted, we still don't know exactly what happened. Today, we're going to examine the timeline, the evidence, the leading theories, and why MH370 continues to fascinate investigators, aviation experts, and millions of people around the world. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 departed from Kuala Lumpur at 12:41 a.m. local time. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members representing more than a dozen nationalities and countries. The aircraft itself was a Boeing 777-200ER, a model with an excellent safety record. The captain was 53-year-old Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 flight hours. His first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid, was 27 and nearing the completion of his training. Weather conditions were good. Nothing appeared unusual. About 38 minutes into the flight, air traffic control instructed the crew to conduct Vietnamese controllers as the aircraft crossed into another airspace sector. The last confirmed radio transmission came shortly afterward. The words were simple. Good night, Malaysian 370. Nothing in the transmission suggested an emergency. Less than 2 minutes later, the aircraft disappeared from civilian radar. At first, this wasn't considered unusual. Radar contacts occasionally disappear briefly. I'm assuming when they cross airspace sectors.
Yeah.
And controllers assumed communication would resume in Vietnam. It never did. For several days after the disappearance, search teams focused on the South China Sea, which made perfect sense. It was the aircraft's last planned route. But then investigators made a shocking discovery. Although civilian radar lost the airplane, military radar continued tracking an unidentified aircraft. The aircraft appeared to turn sharply west. It crossed back over the Malaysian peninsula. Then it flew northwest toward the Andaman Sea. After that, nothing. Or at least that's what everyone thought. But there was another clue, one that would completely change the investigation. Unlike radio communications, aircraft also exchange automatic electronic signals with satellites. These weren't detailed position reports. They were simply routine handshakes between the aircraft's satellite communication system and an Inmarsat satellite. The aircraft never sent another normal transmission after disappearing, but it did continue responding to satellite requests, approximately every hour for nearly 7 more hours. Those electronic pings suggested something astonishing. MH370 had continued flying long after it disappeared from radar. Engineers analyzed the timing of each signal. They couldn't pinpoint the aircraft's exact location. Instead, they calculated 2 enormous arcs stretching across the globe. One arc extended north into Central Asia, and another arc reached deep into the southern Indian Ocean. Further analysis, particularly Doppler shift measurements, strongly favored the southern route. If correct, Flight 370 ended somewhere in one of the most remote stretches of ocean on Earth. And next, we're going to talk about the search. So what followed was unprecedented. Dozens of countries participated in search efforts using multiple methods: ships, aircraft, submarines, satellite imagery, autonomous underwater vehicles. Aviation and nautical experts from around the globe also pitched in. Eventually, the underwater search covered roughly 120,000 square kilometers of the Indian Ocean, starting in the Gulf of Thailand and the South China Sea and ending in the southern Indian Ocean. The cost exceeded $150 million, making it the most expensive aviation search in history. Investigators searched mountains beneath the sea, underwater ridges, volcanic terrain, and vast flat plains. They found nothing. No fuselage, no flight recorders, no cockpit voice recorder, no confirmed main wreckage. Finding an aircraft in the open ocean is extremely difficult, though. So, for example, despite knowing approximately where the Titanic sank, it wasn't found for over 7 years. That was a big ship. So,
Yeah.
the Indian Ocean search area was vastly larger. In some places, depths exceeded 6,000 meters. Even modern technology struggles in those conditions. That was a little over a year. They couldn't find anything.
Right.
Then, in July of 2015, a breakthrough. A large aircraft component washed ashore at Reunion Island in the Western Indian Ocean. Investigators identified it as a flaperon from a Boeing 777. Serial markings confirmed that it came from MH370. Over the following years, additional pieces of debris appeared on coastlines on neighboring islands along the Western Indian Ocean. In Tanzania, South Africa, Madagascar, places like that. Ocean current modeling suggested the debris had drifted naturally from a crash somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. These discoveries provided the first physical confirmation that the aircraft had indeed crashed into the ocean, but they still didn't reveal exactly where. It's easy to be consumed by radar plots and satellite data, but at the center of the story, there are 239 people. Families spent over a year hoping that they would be found. Many struggled with the absence of certainty. Without a recovered aircraft, there was no definitive explanation, no final timeline, no complete understanding of their loved ones' last moments. Some relatives traveled across multiple countries seeking answers. Some criticized governments for delays and conflicting information. Many still advocate for renewed search efforts today. For them, this isn't simply an aviation mystery. It's an unfinished chapter in their lives. So what happened? I'll discuss a few theories, but first it's important to mention that news media reported several sightings of an aircraft fitting the description of the missing Boeing 777. For example, on March 19th of 2014, CNN reported that witnesses, including fishermen, an oil rig worker, and people at a nearby island in the Maldives, saw the missing airliner. However, this was later identified as a Maldivian aircraft. But a fisherman claimed to have seen an unusually low-flying aircraft off the coast of Kota Bharu in Malaysia, while an oil rig worker 187 miles southeast of Vung Tau in Vietnam claimed to see a burning object in the sky that morning, a claim credible enough for the Vietnamese authorities to send a search and rescue mission. And an Indonesian fisherman reported witnessing an aircraft crash near the Malacca Straits. 2 days later, The Star, which is not the Star that we know, it's a Malaysian-based publication, also called The Star, reported that a Malaysian woman saw a stricken Malaysia Airlines plane partially submerged in the waters off the Andaman Islands on the day the plane disappeared. 3 months later, the Phuket Gazette reported that a British woman sailing in the Indian Ocean claimed to have seen an aircraft on fire. Those are some eyewitness reports. The first theory is one of deliberate human actions. Many investigators believe someone intentionally diverted the aircraft. Supporters point to several facts. The aircraft changed course with apparent precision. Communication systems stopped functioning in a sequence some experts consider deliberate. The flight continued for hours. Eventually, fuel exhaustion likely caused both engines to stop. Critics note that while the flight path suggests intentional navigation, there is no publicly available evidence conclusively identifying who was responsible or why. No confirmed motive has emerged in that particular theory. Another theory is pilot incapacitation following an emergency. So another possibility involves an onboard emergency leading to hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen. If cabin pressurization failed and the crew became incapacitated, the aircraft might have continued flying on autopilot until fuel exhaustion. This scenario resembles the 1999 crash of Learjet 35 carrying golfer Payne Stewart. I don't know if you remember that. I slightly remember it, although 1999 was a particularly self-involved period in my life, so I wasn't really paying attention to news. However, many analysts argue that early changes in course appear too deliberate to fit this explanation alone. Then there is the fire or electrical failure theory. So some have proposed an onboard fire. The crew might have turned back toward Malaysia while attempting an emergency landing. As conditions worsened, communications could have failed. Eventually, the crew may have become incapacitated. And again, this theory struggles to explain several aspects of the aircraft's later flight path. And then there is the hijacking theory, which is closely linked to, if not baked into, the last theory that I'm going to talk about. But someone have taken control of the aircraft. While possible in principle, investigators have never found publicly available evidence supporting a traditional hijacking scenario. No terrorist organization has made a credible claim, and passenger background investigations produced no definitive suspects. However, there is one final theory, which is the Russian theory. So there is a Russian theory regarding Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, heavily championed by American writer Jeff Wise, which posits that Russian operatives hijacked the aircraft to distract from the annexation of Crimea. Proponents suggest the plane secretly flew north to Kazakhstan, where it landed at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. So there are some key elements to this theory. Theorists claim that hijackers accessed the plane's electronics bay through a hatch in the first-class cabin to manipulate the satellite data that was reported. This was allegedly done to create a decoy making it appear that the plane flew south toward the Indian Ocean when it actually flew north. There's also a passenger parallel theory, which points to the presence of 3 Russian nationals on board, 2 of whom supposedly had Ukrainian passports and allegedly acted as secret agents. And there is a motive theory, which is that whoever was in charge of this supposed Russian hijacking, they were flexing their geopolitical power against the West to secure strategic items supposedly held in the cargo hold. Now, there are some criticisms of this Russian hijacking theory. Mainstream aviation experts and official investigators widely reject the Russian theory. It fails to account for the physical debris, such as the flaperon and wing parts that washed up on the shores of islands in the Western Indian Ocean, which scientific analysis links directly to the missing Boeing 777. The broader scientific and aviation consensus points to a different conclusion, often favoring the scenario of a deliberate mass murder suicide plot executed by the pilot over the remote southern Indian Ocean. So what do investigators actually believe? Official investigations have been careful with their language. The final Malaysian safety investigation concluded that the aircraft's controls were likely manipulated intentionally. However, investigators stated that they could not determine by whom. They emphasized that without recovering the main wreckage and flight recorders, a definitive conclusion is impossible. That's where the investigation remains today. Some people ask whether, after so many years, locating MH370 would really change anything. The answer is most certainly yes. The flight data recorder could reveal the aircraft's systems, altitude, speed, and control inputs. The cockpit voice recorder might provide insight into the crew's actions during the final hours. Investigators could determine impact damage, engineers could better understand the aircraft's final descent, and most importantly, families would finally have the answers. History reminds us that seemingly impossible discoveries sometimes happen decades later. Case in point, the Titanic.
Yeah.
In conclusion, before we look at the astrology, more than 10 years after Flight 370 disappeared, it remains one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries. We know the aircraft departed normally. We know it deviated dramatically from its planned route. We know it continued flying for several hours. We know debris recovered from the Western Indian Ocean came from that aircraft, but we still do not know exactly why it changed course. We do not know precisely where it entered the ocean, and we do not know what happened during its final hours until the wreckage is found. And by wreckage, I mean main wreckage. Every theory remains exactly that, a theory. Science has solved many mysteries once considered impossible. Perhaps one day, advances in technology or a renewed search will finally provide the answers that investigators and families have sought for more than a decade. Until then, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 stands as a reminder of both the remarkable capabilities of modern aviation and the enduring limits of human knowledge. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you to look at some of the astrology.
Yeah. Before we look at this chart, I wanted to acknowledge that this case is actually important for this podcast because when I saw Demetra George talk at NORWAC a few years ago, she did a talk on asteroids and she used this case as an example. And that was when I came up with the idea to do this podcast.
Oh,
at all. Yeah. So it's kind of a full circle thing. And yeah, so I'm excited to get into it. Let's look at it. So yeah, shout out to Demetra George, one of the best astrologers. All right. Can you see the chart?
Yep.
The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, March 8th, 2014. The flight took off 12:41 a.m. This chart is wild, just like looking at it right away. You know, I mean, off the bat, we've got, this is a Sag rising chart. So thinking about journeys, flights, taking off over the ocean, it's so Sagittarius. And so that means Jupiter in Cancer represents the victims, the plane. Jupiter in Cancer is in the 8th house. the eighth house of death.
Wow.
And yeah. And you can see there's a little S right here. It was stationing powerful Jupiter in this moment.
Mhm.
And, I feel like we've seen this happen a lot with these charts where an exalted Jupiter represents the victims. Jupiter does really well in Cancer. So, it could speak to the fact that this had a lot of coverage, could speak to the fact that maybe one day the truth will come out and we'll know what happened and where the plane actually went.
I mean, I would hope this for any of the cases that we are discussing, but especially this one because it was such a large. I mean, I know the ocean is vast, but and I know it took 70 years for them to find the Titanic, but
Yeah, exactly. So there's a good chance, maybe not in our lifetime, but one day.
yeah, and we know that they've found parts of it,
Right.
so we know that it did event. It's not like in some clandestine airline hangar somewhere in Russia.
Right. Probably not. Most
But
likely not. Next, we look at the moon, which is the secondary signifier for the victim, for the plane. It's in Gemini on the descendant. Gemini just representing multiple people. Yeah. So I think that's my first thought on that, but more on that when we talk about the descendant.
Mhm.
The sun was in Pisces in the fourth house, the bottom of the chart. That's pretty fitting. The water, fourth house can be the end of the matter. The fourth house can, yeah, be like the final resting place. We've also got Neptune right on the IC. The IC is really about the end of the matter. And it's like the ocean was the end of the
Yep.
matter, you know, in that
Well, and
way.
also, doesn't Neptune some like can't Neptune symbolize like mystery,
Yeah.
like
Mystery.
mystery fog, confusion,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Totally. Mystery, fog, confusion, deception, even.
Things that dissolve from view almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
100. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah. Now let's look at the seventh house. Let's entertain the idea that there was foul play. The seventh house is going to tell us about the perpetrator or perpetrators. And so I do think it's interesting that that seventh house is Gemini, where the moon is in
mm,
Gemini. I think that is telling us, if there are perpetrators, they were on the plane, so they're part of they are also victims of the plane crash, right?
yeah.
And that Gemini house is ruled by Mercury, which is an Aquarius in the third house, and it's squaring Saturn in the 12th house. Saturn is in Scorpio. Mercury is communication. Mercury is also travel. It's the getaway car, I always think, especially in these kind of situations.
Mhm.
And, Aquarius is technology. Third house is travel. And the 12th house is mysterious. This is almost like something being orchestrated behind the scenes, a hidden agenda.
Ooh,
Uh,
okay.
I mean, maybe like if we're saying that there is a perpetrator involved,
Yeah.
I could see a hijacking. Saturn is retrograde in Scorpio. That's not great. Right. Like for Mercury to be in a square with Saturn. Mercury is up to no good here.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the fixed stars and asteroids. Fixed stars first. Conjunct Jupiter in the eighth house is a fixed star called Alzir.
Hmm.
And Alzir is associated with hunting, sieges, a prince's revenge, loss of
Oh,
fortune, and trouble.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
Very
Like,
specific too.
yeah,
A
a
Prince's
prince's
Revenge.
revenge. Yeah, I thought that was really wild. I'm like, would it? So, how would we translate that to modern times? Like a prince's revenge, like a revenge on a high scale by a powerful person,
Right.
right?
Wow.
Yeah. So next up, conjunct Saturn is a fixed star called Alpha Serpentis. I think we have seen this before. It's also called the heart of the scorpion.
Hmm.
that can bring violence, madness, self-unaliving, imprisonment, poisoning, and assassination while in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. Also very specific.
Yeah, and if you're thinking in terms of a plane, it like you are in a confined space that can be
Right.
interpreted as a, kind of a prison. You can't really
Yeah.
escape. So,
Very good point. And the 12th house is that as well. 12th house is very much prison,
mhm.
enclosed spaces. Yeah. So it's like enemy hidden in the house kind of thing. Conjunct Mercury is a fixed star called Castra, and it's associated with destructiveness and ill intent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now let's get to the real wild ones, the asteroids.
Oh, those weren't even the wild ones?
No, those are not even the wild ones. These are the real ones.
Dang. Okay.
Conjunct Jupiter in Cancer is an asteroid called Parthenope. And she was a mermaid that was depressed because she couldn't convince some sailors to jump in the ocean with her. So she unalived herself.
Whoa.
That could point to the pilot, maybe,
Mhm. But why? Like that's the
Yeah,
burning question, right?
right.
Because the official reports did say that or like the current working theory is that the pilot intentionally crashed the plane.
I mean, if we want to say that it is the pilot, and so that Mercury represents the pilot, and Mercury is squaring Saturn in the 12th, that makes me think of depression, like, severe depression.
I mean, he was a very seasoned pilot. He had over 18,000 flight hours. He was
Right.
53 and he was training a brand new pilot who was 27 and he was still in his training, you know.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe he was like, I don't know, maybe he was sad that he was at the end of his career and he was like on this flight with someone who was all bright eyed and bushy tailed and, at the start of his career.
But I mean, 53 is not that old. He'd still be.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
I I
I'm
have
closer to
relatives.
53 than 27, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've had relatives that are pilots, and they flew well into their 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that I believe that that the pilot did it intentionally, especially because he had the young pilot on the plane with him. That
Yeah.
feels, yeah, that's a little dark. But I mean, the whole thing is dark.
Yeah. Or, that was that a fixed star or a meteor
Asteroid.
or asteroid? That could also point to just like the airplane being like drawn into the ocean for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
So then, conjunct the descendant and the moon, there are three asteroids. Thetis,
mm,
which was a sea goddess,
mhm,
so just more sea related things. Poseidonos, I'm saying it wrong, but it's essentially it's Poseidon. So,
mhm,
a city named after Neptune, the god of the sea. More water stuff.
mhm.
Also an asteroid called China, which I think
What?
yeah. Yeah. I mean that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then another one that's kind of curious is an asteroid called Coco, which is an asteroid named after the Coco Islands, which I believe they would have flown over.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's another asteroid actually called Poseidon, and it is conjunct the sun. So just like
Oh,
water, water, water.
yeah.
And now for the wild, wild, wild ones. We've got conjunct Jupiter again. I wanted to hold this for the end. Conjunct Jupiter is the asteroid Hack, which is
Whoa.
often associated with hacking computers, hijacking systems, things like that.
Wow. And that kind of aligns with the Russia theory, where
Right,
they hacked the system to make it look like they were flying one way when they were in fact flying another way,
right,
in theory, of
in
course.
theory. And then conjunct Saturn in the 12th is an asteroid called Russia.
Shut the door.
Yes. That's connected to that Mercury, which rules the seventh house.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then conjunct the ascendant is an asteroid called Kazakhstania.
Shut up.
Yes.
You're pulling my leg.
No, this is all real.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then just to add to all of that, conjunct Jupiter again. I had to save all these for the conjunct Jupiter again. There are a handful of asteroids: Moskva, Germania, Dinka. These are all names of the Russian nationals that were on the plane.
Think.
Yeah. Again,
That's
thank you to Dimitra George because she had pulled some of these out in her presentation. So it's
wow.
just so wild.
That is crazy. I mean, listen, it could be kind of like a combo platter of a bunch of different things. Like there could
Yeah.
have been, for entertainment purposes, there could have been Russian involvement, but maybe something went wrong. Like maybe some of these other theories are holding some weight. Like maybe the Russia theory is part of it, and then maybe that like deliberate human action component kicked in where like maybe the pilot tried to veer the plane back and like maybe there was some sort of tussle, maybe he died and
Yeah.
and then maybe like because the other pilot was still in training, and if this theory is true, like we don't know if any of the Russian hijackers, if they exist, if they had any airline or flight training.
Right.
So it could have been that like maybe the plane flew on autopilot for a little while until it ran out of gas and then went down. Or maybe nobody knew how to fly the plane. Or maybe there was some distress. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that there was some Russian involvement. I don't necessarily think that it was like the Kremlin, or it might just be that the hijackers were Russian. Maybe they were part of some offshoot of some group. But again, nobody claimed anything. If the mission failed, which it clearly did,
Yeah.
if there was a mission, then I can see why they wouldn't claim it because it failed. So
Yeah.
I think either way there was foul play involved.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to keep in mind too is that we have the list of passengers that had to have been someone, or had to have been one or more people on that list
Yeah.
of passengers if there was some sort of interference or hijacking taking place. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's it. Like they were hijacked. And I wonder if we're ever going to know exactly the intention. That's the part,
yeah,
I do
yeah,
think they'll find the plane eventually, the bits, the important bits, but I just wonder if we'll ever find out why it happened.
yeah.
I do. That's the one thing I feel the strongest about is that there was some kind of foul play.
And I think, I said it before, but I'll say it again. I think that the most important thing and the most important reason why I think that this needs to be solved is because there are 239 people who are unaccounted for. There are families involved that want answers, and this mystery needs an ending
Needs an ending, yeah.
so that people can move on with their lives and be able to mourn the loss of their loved ones. And so that's the most important reason. And honestly, like that's you know, I know we make jokes and we make light of things, but like really that's the whole reason why we do this. We want answers for our own curiosity, but also because we know that there are people who don't have those answers who I think would greatly benefit from having them and being able to find peace. If anybody has any information about this story, you can actually email us. What's our email address, William?
astrologyunknown@gmail.com.
There you go. So hit us with your hot tips.
Yeah, please do.
Well, until next time, see
What was the
y'all
thing you
later.
said last? You
Oh
said something.
God, I don't remember. I have no idea what I said. What did I say? Keep them, keep it
Uh,
mysterious.
yeah, keep your, keep it mysterious. Or I don't remember.
Well, we continue to not have a closing tagline. So
Yeah,
hey, if you have a closing tagline idea for us, you can also email us at astrologyunknown@gmail.com because
exactly. Yeah, send us your ideas for our close, and we never know how to end these things. So
yeah, it's hard to end a mystery, right? Like if you don't
right,
actually have the answer,
yeah,
we're just kind of like, well, there's those facts. See y'all later.
exactly.
Um, anyway, all right. See y'all next time around. Bye.
Bye.